Prime, which is purely sort of an economic think tank, and ISSI, which has been working largely on strategic issues and foreign policy issues, are collaborating together, shows the change and the importance of the change which this situation has unfolded for all of us. We for a few years, I think we have been hearing the word and the phrase of geoeconomics. Right. But I think this setting itself, this discourse itself, is a small manifestation of how it is important to link the two, the economics, which cannot be isolated from larger politics, and the changes in the geopolitics around us. And so I'm very happy that we are collaborating. Yesterday I was struck by a news which I'm sure is you must have seen. That Pakistan has opened transit route, a transit corridor for Iran. Right? So this was unthinkable before this war. We had, of course, provided Afghanistan, a transit trade route for a long time because of international obligations, but that has created complications for our economy. But I think this was quite unthinkable, and before this war, actually, we were in a situation where Iran was, dragging or about to drag Pakistan into international court for its lack of commitment on the pipeline, energy pipeline. But on the other hand, we have seen now that, okay, this is a new collaboration opening up, not just with Iran, but also through Iran with Central Asia. Right? So I think this is very important. And it shows kind of agility, and I must, of course, acknowledge that this is, of course, the idea that foreign policy is also linked with economic interest. So this is very important. The second, I think, major shift, I would say, in Pakistan's history is that we have been hearing for decades Pakistan has been, a side of a rent-seeking economy for its role in wars, right? Being a frontline state, being, being a sort of a country to go in between. But for the first time, we are, on a stage where we are not looking at a dividend from war, but we are looking at a dividend from peace. So this, again, I think a major shift and a great opportunity for Pakistan. And the diplomatic engagement of Pakistan's leadership, both military and civil, has actually created this opportunity to assert that kind of importance, not just regionally, but also globally. So what could be the peace dividend which Pakistan can benefit? This is the broader context. And that's why when Dr. Neelam and I were discussing this program, we thought that we should structure the discussion in a way that we should highlight policy implications for Pakistan, but also what needs to be done. What is the course of action? This crisis has created opportunities because, of course, a major realignment is happening in terms of geopolitics. At the same time, after Pakistan's role in facilitation and mediation, I think the perception of this role is received in different countries. Like GCC may not be welcoming Pakistan overt or covert support to Iran. Right? GCC may not be welcoming the fact that Pakistan is looking into transit trade opportunities with Iran. And also, frankly, there's a competition when we talk about ports development. We know that the Dubai port has been a major, like a free trade zone for this region in the world. So I think they will compete. They will still remain competitive, and it will not be easy, I would say, to maintain that level of trust, which has eroded. And I think there are economic interests involved, and I would not be too optimistic about the opportunities which the Gulf countries may offer to us. when the war officially ends. The short answer is yes. But it depends on how do we approach the fund and how do we approach the design of the program. Look, the essentially the IMF is there because of a balance of payment crisis, right? But because balance of payment crisis is rooted also in a fiscal crisis and overall the government approach to sectors like energy sector, business regulation. So we have seen increasingly the scope of IMF program has increased a lot. And now we have seen its intervention in, let's say, governance mechanism, in corruption diagnostics. So over the time, I have seen that the scope of the program has increased a lot. So there is a point, there's a very important point which you are making. But my understanding is that if, for instance, the trade policy is an example, Dr. Manzoor would can highlight more that the trade policy reform, tariff reform, was not driven by the IMF. It was driven by a sort of a national consensus within the leadership that it needs to happen. So that's one example. So which tells us that it is possible, but it depends on what kind of negotiations and what kind of approaches we're doing. Yeah, I will just highlight a few points. I think also the success of a dialogue is not perhaps finding an answer, but pointing to the right questions. Right? So some of those questions which keep troubling us have been highlighted. We have covered, I think, all the dimensions of this crisis, starting from the economic angle, energy angle, agriculture, trade, and policy institutional angle. We also had a CPEC or Chinese perspective. Was important because China has been the most important investor in Pakistan last 10 or 15 years. So, um, my understanding is as follows. First of all, there is a question of like industrialization. The um, problem is that, as also Dr. Hassan mentioned about business environment, that this crisis has created opportunity, but it has, of course, not created incentives to change the structure. Why we can't industrialize, or why the industrial share in the GDP is declining? The answer is very clear. To me, the root cause of the answer is business environment, regulations, but also taxation. And as Dr. Bakar also mentioned and hinted, that even under the crisis, we are not prepared to sort of revisit the taxation policy framework. And if we can do that, I think it can open up opportunities for investment, for businesses, both within Pakistan and also from outside into the country. But if we don't change that policy framework, if we don't change that, then I think we can't benefit from these opportunities. Now, I think we also miss some important developments which happened over the years without any policy, without any design, and not necessarily in emergencies. So, for instance, solar was mentioned. Now, solar revolution is there, and Dr. Khalid, please correct me. The total installed capacity potential is 46,000 megawatts, and solar is already 41, not installed, but in terms of availability, it's not installed, but the availability is there, right? So that is almost maybe 80-90% is there, and so that's huge, right? So we have talked about it, but unfortunately, I think the speakers have rightly pointed out that the current policy changes is discouraging that, rather than benefiting from a change which happened spontaneously from society, from businesses. We are actually trying to reverse that trend. So that's the problem. Now, industries मैं एक और example दूंगा, वो है कि Islamabad, we do not think about the industries which are evolved again organically. So there is a huge aerospace industrial complex and aerospace industrial units just around 30 kilometers of the radius of 0 point. And that industry evolved over years, essentially as defense contractors, but now they have developed sufficient capabilities with possible civil applications. If we have the right framework. I think the legal framework has to be amended so that those capabilities can also be translated. And that was a point about the nuclear, sir, which you mentioned very rightly, that there is a lot of that, but then the civil and the defense or the strategic do not talk to each other often. And that's the SIFC thing, which Dr. Vakar has advocated. But I'm not sure if I share the optimism in terms of the capacity of the SIFC. I don't see it as a capacity problem, to be honest. I see it as more of a design problem. And the whole design problem, where you are creating another layer of bureaucrats, is problematic, to be honest. I think we are not changing the rules of the game. We are not changing the structure, the underlying governance framework. um, we are just creating windows, right? Single windows, a lot of single windows. Incidentally, this morning, I was part, and Dr. Manzoor was also there, was part of a exercise, of a national exercise. Ministry of Finance was hosting it. Which was a lot about the coordination, about how different reforms are, needs to be driven by interministerial coordination. So I hope that something good come out of these reforms, and we can have better coordination. But I think basic problem I see is still the regulatory infrastructure needs to be redesigned. I do acknowledge that there is currently a cabinet committee on reorganizing the regulations, business regulations. So a lot of that has happened, but I think we have not seen the impact on the ground yet. Economics, as an economist, I must say I'm humbled. We can't do much. We also we should not economists should not be asked to forecast anything. So economists are very poor in forecasting. Economists are good for analysis. As an economist, I can share that. But also, I think when we talk about the changes in terms of geopolitics, that's not the job of only economists. That's where we all need to bring us together, and that's the purpose of this discussion. That it's not just the economists, but also sort of strategic thinkers, sectoral experts, and which have to come together and then create those solutions. And that's think tank's job. I mean, think tank's job is to create this discussion alive, create discourse, create narratives which can feed into the policy. We have seen some degree of success over the last few years. I won't go into that detail right now, but it is possible, and I hope that we can continue that effort.
I will speak on Pakistan's trade. I think as all other countries are affected with this Middle East crisis, similarly, Pakistan is more affected because the external sector of Pakistan is in trouble with this. So, first of all, if we see what are the Pakistan and Gulf connections, here I will mention that we export labor and we get remittances. And also the energy imports are affected, but we have limited industrial connection with these countries. If I quote the statistics given by State Bank of Pakistan, the annual remittances of Pakistan are $38.3 billion, and almost half are coming from the Gulf countries. Like from Saudi Arabia, we are getting $9.34 billion. Then from UAE, around $7.83 billion, and from other countries, $3.71 billion. And the trade share is almost less than 8% of Pakistan's total trade. If we look at these Gulf countries, they also have a vision. For example, vision of Saudi Arabia is Vision 2030, and also UAE has a vision of 2030, where they want to diversify their industry, and they are they were of the view that they want to become self-reliant. So they also want to invest, and they have some around $4 trillion wealth, which they want to invest somewhere. Now, if we see the remittances we are receiving from the Gulf countries, they were at surge in March. especially in March. If we compare it to February, from Saudi Arabia, we received the increased remittance flow of 34%. Then from UAE, the flow was increased by 18%. From UK, it was 10%. And from US, it was around 12%. And from EU countries, it was 15%. So this shows that remittances have increased from all over the countries, but Gulf countries have a more share in it. The current model, if we see, is that remittances led external balance support, which we are having with connection with the Gulf countries. But what is desired? Desired is production plus capital plus logistic support. This is what we need from them. And if coming to the policy, there is labor to skill partnership. In fact, we need, because our labor that go to the Gulf countries and GCC countries, that is unskilled labor. I think we should send there some skilled labor. We should try to build some connections, and we should see what are their needs, and then we can train our labor and we can send them to the Gulf countries. So this will develop a quality workforce. Skill certification for workforce according to the GCC needs can be given, and joint ventures can be done to bring them, and some trainings can be given to them. Similarly, the industrial investment corridor is the opportunity at this time, where GCC can be an anchor country, and investors can invest in special economic zones, as the first speaker also talked about the special economic zones. So the current utilization of those zones is less than 40%. We can get some investment from those countries, as Dr. Nasir has also said, that it is this one single 1 month in which we can do some negotiations with these countries. Otherwise, someone else will come and they will drag that investment. We can establish Pakistan Gulf Investment Corridor that can be sector-specific investment zone, and they can be we can give them tax aids in those zones, and we can also provide them security, law and order. We should focus on it, because why we are not having the FDI, most of the times the security concern is very much dominated. And we can also do some agreements with them, and we can provide them some guarantee of the profits, so they can invest here in Pakistan. And moreover, the resilient trade, and this was all about the remittances. Now coming to the, if we need resilient trade and connectivity, then these are the foundations of economic stability. In this connection, our ports are very important. If we see what modern ports provide, we can see the Singapore port and Rotterdam port. They are modern ports, and they are providing very much those type of facilities which we are not providing. If I talk about Gwadar, there needs to be shift from symbolic to functional logistic hub, because Gwadar as a location, it is at a very good place, and then infrastructure edge is there, but the utilization is not properly done. We have the infrastructure, and we can do these things. We can develop something over there, but only hard infrastructure is not necessary. We also need the other logistics. So Pakistan is situated in the region where we are also having competition from the other ports, like Dubai, Salalah, and Chabahar. These ports, even Shanghai port on the other side, that is also a sort of modern, but most modern ports are Singapore and Rotterdam ports. So if we try to see that how much this Gwadar port can handle, it may be able to handle 60% of the Pakistan's trade cargo. Now coming to the Karachi port, we can also do some modernization of this port. In this recent time of crisis, we have seen that Karachi port has handled a lot of cargo. But this port is only handling the cargo. Other things are not offered at that port. So the modernization is very much needed. I think we can do some automation and digital port management can be there. Then presence of rail and linked inland container yards, they are present there and they can be connected. Then partnership with DP World and AD Port type agencies, these organizations, this can be done, which will reduce the time of from 5 to 7 days can be reduced to 2 to 3 days. So this port can also boost the competitiveness of Pakistan, but we need to do something for its improvement. Only in the month of March, 75% of the redirected cargo shipment was handled at Karachi port. This was quite a good number for them to handle it. Then 11,000 transshipment containers were also handled by them, and 133 vessel calls were handled. This information has been given by Karachi Port Trust, and this is only for the month of March. So the Karachi port can do something if we focus on it. Then coming to the Pakistan Gulf Economic Bloc, it's a very important bloc. Like now, from few years, we can see that the regional trade is coming in focus, and most of the countries are now they are trading within the region, within the blocks, within the trade agreements. Major trade agreements are there. So this can also be a trade bloc where we can handle something. And there can be some transition of a labor exporter to production. It can be a production hub, not only a labor exporter, even the production hub can be there. So, and it will also lift the GDP. The integrated model can be there can be skills plus industry and plus logistics. Now, this is the time when logistics is becoming very much important at the ports also and everywhere, and even for the and other transit and type trade which Pakistan has to offer. So the logistics sector needs to be lifted up. So our strategic goal is to industrial partnership and trade with Gulf countries and GCC countries. This should be our goal. Now, coming to the policy outcomes, geoeconomic relevance will be determined by the port efficiency in the next years. And Gulf is, Gwadar is underutilized. That can be become a strategic location. And the automation of and digitization of Karachi port, that is also needed. And if we see the studies of UNCTAD, they have also empirically shown that those countries which have implemented some port automation, they have seen almost 20 to 30% turned around reduction in cost. So this can also be encouraging fact for us. Then establishing Gwadar as GCC logistic hub is very important. Pakistan may offer them it can create GCC and Gwadar shipping corridor, and they can offer some incentives to GCC countries over there, like reduction in tariffs, then provide fuel subsidies in initial years at least, and this type of incentives can be given to them. And the target can be that increase Gwadar cargo 3 to 4 times within 5 years. This can be set as a target. So Pakistan's future relevance in Gulf will not be determined by the number of workers we send to them, but with the number of industries and the port integration and services we will provide to them. And coming to the last thing, which you have also discussed, the SRO, Pakistan can be a transit trade hub. Now we can see it that as this SRO has been announced, the agreement which was done between Iran and Pakistan, it was done in 2008. The agreement was bilateral agreement on international road transport of passengers and goods. And now it is immediately it is implemented so that we can provide transit to Iran. So this can be expanded, and yes, definitely we are already providing transit to Afghanistan, and we can also approach to Central Asian countries. So Pakistan can be a transit hub at this time, and this is a very, very good opportunity. And even having Gwadar port in already the facilities are there, and we just have to operationalize the Gwadar port in this sense. So, and even multiple routes are also identified with this SRO, that how we will do that transit, and the operationalization is the key fact. And the effective effectively and immediately regulated by it is by a Custom Act of 1969 and the procedures prescribed by FBR.
I think what most of us have said is that there are structural weaknesses, of course, which don't allow us to be resilient in emergency times such as these. So I think whenever we hear the term structural, what this means is that this is an institutional problem. So the fact that institutions need to evolve, institutions need to strengthen, and because they don't, that's why there are structural lapses. So structural is almost synonymous to the institutional weaknesses. And yes, Dr. Selva, you're right, those weaknesses continue to persist. So I think what worries me is not that there's a fallout of war. What worries me is that we are under a fund program. We are configured in a manner that most of the opportunities that are being discussed here, opportunities from the crisis, they'll be missed opportunities because we don't have the right kind of institutional setting to really foresee and put in place or make some of those actionable stances towards those opportunities. And I think you rightly pointed out, there are, of course, interministerial strengthening which is required, but also federal provincial as well. So I think it was just a week in the war after 28th of Feb, and I recall there was a prices committee meeting, and I'll switch to Urdu for a while because this is important, And you could see that all the ministries were there. So it's not a problem that the institutions weren't present, And I remember one of the senior most officer being asked that where are the scenarios for today? And he politely replied that data commerce se chala hua hai, right? And when he was asked, have we liaised with the central bank, he said, wo bhi data shaam tak aa raha hai. Right? So, agar is तरीके से हमने interministerial coordination करनी है, वो भी war के time में, foreigners बैठे इसलिए I switched to Urdu. तो I think we need a reality check. ये जितनी opportunities की बात हो रही है, institutions नहीं हैं तो opportunities को हम नहीं reap कर सकेंगे, and I think this is what Prime and ISSI continue to work on. So our response to emergency times, and we do respond very well in emergency times. जितनी diagnostics हैं पाकिस्तान के बारे में, they say Pakistan responds best during emergency, right? Our response is an NCOC style governance once an emergency strikes, right? So my first point is that at this point, that style of governance to reap all these opportunities is missing because we are involved in much more bigger things outside of Pakistan, right? So whatever has to be done inside, right, like renegotiation of our debt or renegotiation or negotiation with IMF or GCC block ki Dr. Sahiba ne bahut achhi baat ki, and energy ki baat hui. I think all of us are busy somewhere else, and that time which has to be sort of configured for internal alignment, we are sort of missing that. So the first question that we had was that how do we really move towards, move away from reactive kind of management, So I think I still see a lot of logic for NCOC style governance if we can sort of put it in place as of now, given that inflation is really getting out of hands by the day, and we have heard from the monetary policy statement yesterday as well. And we have an institution now for that as well, which is called SIFC. They can lead that, right? I think second part is about the strategic reserves for oil, wheat, and fertilizer. So while we are talking about it, but which institution is taking the lead? At least I don't get that reading. Who's leading the discussion on building strategic buffers of oil, wheat, and fertilizer required for fuel and food security, So that's second. Third is we are talking about de-risking our supply chain. We need imported inputs to keep our export sector running, to keep our domestic manufacturing running. So who's managing that, Because as I see it currently, the communication between commerce and FBR and the central bank needs to be literally in real time at this moment if you want to de-risk your trade supply chain. Fourth, I think what we are hearing is the maritime and transit opportunity. Again, I think we are discussing this in think tank space. I don't hear this narrative coming from the government. Dr. brightly pointed out, Dr. Ali Salman, about the opportunity with Iran sort of opening up. And I would really like that there's some public-private dialogue around it, because private sector must be very interested in engaging with Iran at this point, not just in energy, but in almost all the lines that one can open. And I'm sure government is constrained on time. And this is where think tanks can help the government in most of the maritime and transit opportunities that follow. How do we now sit with the IMF? You have seen IMF stance. Despite of us being in the war, they have not relaxed the conditions. We are about 3 weeks away from, or 4 weeks away from the federal budget. And the message is the same. They are not bringing down the text to GDP ratio target for us. They're not bringing down any targets for that matter, So where do we go from here? I think this is where Pakistan needs to take a leadership. We need to get all those countries, including Egypt, Turkey, who are constrained under this crisis. We should take the leadership of Global South and really impress upon the IMF that we need a new deal. So we heard it during the bank fund meeting that there may be a package for such countries for $50 billion. But I think that announcement has to come before our federal budget is announced, unless, and if this doesn't happen, the figures that the finance minister presents during the first week of June in the federal budget, those figures will have no value. In the first quarter or the second quarter of FY27, you will be landing into a mini budget. So I think, and I won't dwell on that these ministries themselves will need to sit down for real-time information of evidence between themselves. But I think what this crisis has shown is that two ministries speak less than I anticipated, at least: energy and commerce. And what the private sector told us was that there was a review of GSP Plus, and there are reviews of FTAs which are coming up. And while commerce is negotiating FTAs and GSP Plus, who has to provide energy to the industry? You see, so the fact that there was no or weaker coordination, weaker discussion between the energy ministry and the commerce ministry ended up pushing for liberalization, pushing for market access, and we didn't have the input to produce all that surplus which was required. The last point that I wanted to make was that while everything is being expected at the federal level, where does the coordination at the federal and provincial level come in? So I was, over the weekend, I was working with the government of Sindh, and they really wanted to know that when do we open up the dialogue on transshipment with the federal government? So while the federal government is saying that there's a lot of opportunity in transshipment, there's a lot of opportunity in storage, which could be provided to the cargo passing from our seas, But the provincial governments of Sindh and the provincial government of Balochistan, who of course have a say or have a sort of a role in the operations, they have to be on board as well.